Hello, and welcome to the Blue Pencil Sessions. I'm Eileen Cook, and I'm here today with my colleagues, Donna and Crystal, and we are having a chance to look at some early pages. We're very excited. This is pages from an early chapter book mystery by Rena Traxel. And if those of you who will read along, it's the story of some monsters prepping their science projects. And what I know for certain, because we had a little chat before we started, is that absolutely all three of us are in love with this concept. Really cute opening with all of these kids sort of gathered together in their own little monster world, doing what comes naturally to them, which is preparing for their science fair project. But this is where we actually had some different perspectives coming up next. And I think it's going to show most interesting on who has kids and has written for children before and who has not. So as one who has not, my initial things was sort of wondering if we needed more details in the opening to sort of explain it and sort of draw those images in the reader's minds. And I think that comes from, I'm used to writing sort of middle grade and up, and sort of have read middle grade and up, but haven't read below. So I'm wondering, Crystal, if you want to speak first about your sort of experience, and then Donna, your experience too as a parent and what stuck out to you.
For me, I think as soon as I started reading it, I pictured little black and white illustrations kind of fleshing things out. So I think my brain instantly pegged it as an early reader chapter book with the odd illustration in black and white. So you'll see kind of lines of those at the library if you go in and take a look. And that's kind of what it felt like, just in terms of tone. And I think that happened sort of automatically. It wasn't a conscious processing, but that was what I was seeing, which is not necessarily the case. It may be that you want to push it into the chapter book that isn't the early reader chapter book, in which case our comments are going to go a slightly different way here. So you'll have to filter everything we say throughout this blue pencil with a grain of salt and a filter of depending on what your intention for it is. And I don't know if you have a publisher in mind or a line in mind for this story, but it is often useful to just hit a publisher's website if you're targeting somebody. Like Orca Books, it does a really great job of this, for example, of actually filling in the very specific like language requirements and whatever else for each of their lines, as well as word count. So just double check if it is something that you have in mind to pitch towards something for Scholastic or Orca or wherever that you are, just super clear of which category it fits in, and that will help.
And I think that's a really good point for everyone, is to keep in mind their genre and really drilling down who that audience is. And I cut you off, Donna. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's totally fine. Yeah, it's funny because I did not see this as something that would have pictures. I was taken to an entirely different place, which was imagining my kid and having read to him so many books when he was little. And I saw this as one of those books where we'd lie in bed and I'd be reading it, but he'd be watching along. And so I saw it as a book that was for maybe a 6-year-old, and I didn't think a 6-year-old could read this, and Crystal seems to think maybe a 6-year-old can.
Well, it wouldn't be your starting place. What I'm saying is the early chapter book in the 6 to 8-year-old category is usually you'd start with the parents reading, then the kids are learning words and taking over, and that depends a lot on the skills of the reader at that level.
Because the story to me is very much, it's so appealing. It's one that I would, as a parent, have loved to have read and would have been happy to read more than once, as many of the books I did read did. But the story itself, at least in the context of my kid, seems like a younger than the language story at this point. So I was reading it from that perspective, and I don't know if that's the audience that you've got. But from there, what I absolutely loved everything. I mean, I loved everything about this. I loved the characters. I love the history that you bring in. That the main character, that Iggy, is a great many greats grandson of Ichabod Crane. Was that it? Yeah, and is a detective. And the history of one of the other characters. Who is the other character that has history? Oh, it's Franco Stein.
sign. Yeah.
Cute, so cute. Anyway, the story just was totally sweet and compelling. Eileen said she thought the babysitter seemed mean, and I just like turning the light off without giving the kids a chance. And to me, I said, well, that's just, typical mean babysitter. But I guess also in the back of my head was like, that's just typical mean mom sometimes too. It's like, I said lights out at 8:00 and it is 8:00, like lights are out. So.
Oh, you're very prompt. I would have been like, lights out was 8:00. It's now 8:15. We're done here. I always got suckered into that last few minutes.
But the point is, when you say lights out, when you finally get there, lights are out. Anyway.
Even when you're holding electrical wires, people.
It's a copper
Safety.
wire in a lemon.
Safety.
It's in a lemon.
It's hooked to a child. The one thing I want to make sure to really highlight, like separate from the fact that I love the concept, is I think you've created a great gang of kids. And I think in a story like this, like that's part of what's going to be so entrancing is it's going to be this group of kids a la Goonies style kind of thing, solving a mystery. And I really like that they each feel sort of distinctive to me. I love that we can't see Ghost. So she has this tendency to sort of pop up in places. And you can see how each of them, again, as you talked about with their history, are going to be very distinctive. So yeah, my biggest comment, and I put it in with just a dash of salt, is if it wasn't a book that didn't have, and again, I'm not thinking illustrated like a picture book, but where it might have, a couple drawings in front of each chapter, to kind of see things a little bit clearly, then I would put in some more description. But that again is going to be dependent on the line. Now, the two of you, did you have other things you wanted to highlight?
You just said one thing which I wanted to emphasize or reiterate, which is each of these characters, even though they've only got 1 or 2 lines each, they are already unique characters. Like I love Ghost's personality. It's like, yeah, well, you should maybe get some glasses. Like, love her already. So well done on making them like deep point of view on these little monsters in 3 pages. Fabulous.
Yeah, for sure. I sort of in my head can very easily picturing it have series potential because of the sort of volume of personality in each of these little monster bodies. It was not hard to picture how that could be a thing. So sort of like the the Time Warp Trio adventures, or like the Goosebumps books or whatever. Like it felt like a little bit kind of in that era, or
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly. The various adventures.
Yeah.
I had one specific suggestion actually, which is at the end there is a paragraph, well, 2 paragraphs actually, where they're lying down to sleep, the lights have been turned off, and the main character is kind of reflecting on the fact that there isn't anything to fear here. And that's when we kind of get the breakdown into Monster Hollow and who these people are. And right after that, there's one that is, which brings me to me. I'm the great, plus a bunch more greats, granddaughter of Ichabod Crane, famous detective from way long ago, back when ghosts haunted the Hollows. So that's cool. It's now the Hollow is mostly peaceful. And what's being set up is the fact that, 2 lines later, there's this, we assume, blood-curdling scream. And so what would be great is just a tiny bit more breathing room between setting up the peacefulness and the scream, because there's only 2 sentences or like a line and a half between those 2. So we don't quite have a chance to sit in the peacefulness before the scream, was sort of what jumped out at me, that I would have liked a teeny bit more room. So even just swapping the order of those 2 paragraphs so that you have the, start with yourself and then as you're reflecting, and then reflect out on your friends, and then have the scream after you've said how it's peaceful, because there's a mummy, or there's mummies and zombies and whatever, but even the zombie eats human food.
I love that. I love that.
I instantly was like, wait, food of humans? And you're not humans, so that's okay. Or like eats food like the other monsters who are humanoid in this. So that was the only other thing that I flagged, was my brain was like, well, crunched up humans, but that wouldn't be threatening here because they're monsters.
That's hilarious.
You know
what? I didn't bump on that, but now that you say it, that last line, now the hollow is mostly peaceful, for little kids who don't already know the story of Sleepy Hollow, it is a great opportunity to just put in like that little bit there to have that context, because that might be new information that we understand because we've read these stories and we know them, you know. Maybe?
And Frankenstein too, and mummies, like depending on the age of your readers and whether or not it is sort of a read with or read independently, or if you're envisioning it being something used in a classroom setting, those are all kind of different levels of setup, and you would integrate that information in a different way. So yeah, just worth
so much fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to just put down there, I like that the chapter ends, or this section ends with someone screams. Like, that's just a lovely thing in terms of, you know, as a parent, you're not getting away with not reading the next little chapter. And, you know, certainly as a reader, like, I wanted to know who screamed, what happened. Like, I was definitely pulled in at that moment. So lots of great stuff happening in here. And I think thinking about your target reader is going to make the difference for revisions, but otherwise a really polished piece. So good job on Rena. And everyone else, you want to find out whether or not I read picture books? Well, there's only one way to find out. Submit a blue pencil. We'll take a look at that. Or any genre, we're happy to take a page at. So until then, we will see you all around the Academy. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.